It's always fun to talk about, just college admissions and what that means for students. I got trained in college admissions. I know a lot about it, but I don't do it every day, and so it's fun to get to talk about it, because mostly it's just conversations I have with tutoring students sometimes. So.
Oh yeah, and I have these conversations with my student clients as well. So it's things that families just want to talk about and need to know more about. So, so the topic, that we're talking about is areas to consider when you're choosing a college. And the very first topic that we chose to pick to talk about today is just academics in general. So,
absolutely. I mean, I think, everybody knows you should try to, choose a college where you can get a good competitive GPA and learn the things you want to learn, right? That's the basic step.
Right. So, which you're bringing up the very first topic, which is, does that school actually have the major that you're needing to support the career choice that you're gunning for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you need, the college doesn't have to be full of famous academic people. It needs to be full of professors who are going to work with you and help you prepare for a career and things like that. Because, certainly learning the topic of your major, learning all the things, that's really, really important. But you still have to get a job, right?
Absolutely. Well, and, let's face it, we all know that college is, it is to help prepare us for our career, right? As well as a lot of other things. So as we're speaking to this, just realize we really are just talking about the academic piece of it. So yeah, your college needs to have your major, or it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go there, right?
Which means you need to know what your major is going to be. And a lot of students don't know that. But that's something that you help students with a lot, right?
Right. And just kind of figuring out, I always call it, Bobby, if I use my hands, which is totally janky, I need to figure out a better way. But if these are all the opportunities, all the careers you could ever have, all we want to do is get you into a pie shape so that you can then get in there and start messing around in there, right? And start learning different things and really narrowing that pie shape. So by the time you get out of school, you have formulated an idea of what career you want. So it's really figuring out that career path first. And when you figure that out, a major falls out of it. It really gets pretty easy to figure out what major you need to claim.
That's absolutely right. And then once you do figure that out, what you want is to have now I'm still in contact with several professors from college. We're friends on Facebook. We, talk periodically. Having that kind of relationship was so important. And that's partially because I went to a school that was kind of medium-sized, right? It seems unlikely that at an enormous school you're going to be able to do that, but some do, manage that inside the majors. And so you can find out by reading students, going and researching and finding out, I know PrincetonReview.com and their school descriptions, they have quotes from students from every college on all kinds of different topics that tell you, what the relationship with the faculty is, what the academics are like. And so once you start narrowing down schools, look at that and see if that's, what you would want, because you want to be able to actually meet some professors and get to know them, because that can be so important for finding your career.
You do. And here's, I think, the other piece of the puzzle when you walk into school, knowing that career path and knowing what you want to major in, all of a sudden, having the courage to go up and talk to that professor, it's actually a meaningful conversation because you're interested in the topic.
Right.
You really want to find out more. So you have a reason to go up and talk to that professor. And I really feel like, Bobby, at a small, a medium, a large school, you can do that, but the student has to take that initiative. And
absolutely.
And being motivated because you're interested in that particular subject, I think it gives you a lot more courage and a reason to go talk to that professor versus just trying to come up with something to talk to the professor about.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of earlier this spring when we talked about the Gallup organization's kind of analysis of the factors that lead to success in college, right? One of them was going and, students who go and talk to professors tend to do to succeed more, both in college and later in life, and also students who get to work long-term with a professor on a particular thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a really important thing.
Yeah. So having those meaningful conversations with the professor is really important. So when you're looking at certain colleges, a really great question to ask is, do the professors have office hours, and do they, open themselves up for you to have those types of conversations? So I think it's another great thing when we're thinking about academics. Is that something that school provides?
Absolutely. And I think, that's, back to what we were saying before, that like often they will say, when you read college websites, you have to like read between the lines, because they're all going to say that they do things like that. Right. But then you have to, that's why I always recommend going in and seeing what the students say and finding out. And this leads us into really good questions to ask when you're on a campus visit too, because if you can find an actual student and talk to them, right, then you might get some different answers, of what it's really like. Right.
And to piggyback on that, Bobby, is when you're on those college visits, to actually visit that school within the school or the department within that school that you're going to major in, right? So that you can ask the pointed questions about those professors that you're actually going to be interacting with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can't overstate it. I mean, when part of this is I didn't do most of this. And so I kept changing my major multiple times during college. And, and it's so easy when you're undirected, like one professor can change your direction so much, both good or bad. I mean, I originally majored in physics for a semester because I had a really great physics teacher in high school. And then I had one really poor, my first physics teacher in my first semester in college was really terrible, I thought. And so I just changed out of the majors purely because I was like, well, I didn't like that professor. And that's not how you do these things.
It does make a difference. And I'll tell you, so I know on a lot of college campuses, they have a program, and I wish I knew the name. I didn't think about asking my son about this, but where they rank the professors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he really, like, even going into certain classes, he knew that he had a professor that was really hard grade-wise. And, walking in knowing that, it kind of helped him, because he realized that even though he was a student, that in this class, he might not be getting A's. And, it was meaningful, right? Because his expectations were a little bit lower. It didn't mean he didn't try just as hard. It just meant he realized that was the reality of it.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you have to, like, my friends who are professors just absolutely hate that professor ranking system, but it keeps them on their toes. Like, as a student, you want to be sure to think about what it really means, right? If it's just simply a ranking, but generally they have lots of different factors and stuff. And, and I can totally see saying, oh, I want to go to this professor because that, they're ranked as being easy, right? But in your major, the most that I learned was from the hardest professors, and I remember them the most. And it was such a struggle to get a good grade in their class, but it was far more rewarding. And those are the teachers I ended up being friends with, because they saw me, really, really work hard. But so hard but fair would be a good thing to look for, whereas, it's easy and all the tests are out there. Maybe you don't want that, except for some class that you just, is required, but you hate and don't want to take or something,
Right.
For the things you're truly interested in, look for the hard but fair professors who are happy to talk to students and, get to know them.
Completely agreed, because they are going to push you harder. And, and especially if it's in something that you love or that you're really interested in learning. I agree with you, Bobby. And thanks for that distinction, because I think that's important for the kids to remember on this, right? That it's about learning and being pushed. And,
I hadn't thought about it that way, but it absolutely is, like if you manage to find the major you're super interested in, right, then you're gonna want to take those harder classes because they're going to be more interesting to you. But if you're just like randomly pick a major out of a hat, you're not going to want to take the hard classes in that major, right? But once you are interested, you absolutely do want to. You're like, oh, I want to learn all these things because this is what I'm going to be doing in my career, and this is going to make me better at it. And it'll make you better at choosing, the classes you take, right? And so, and that's basically the thing is, I mean, I would say academics wise, make sure the school has the things you want, and then get in there quick and get to the advising office of that department and get to them and start talking to them about, okay, for which careers, which path, because each major has different paths. Which things should I concentrate in? Which classes should I choose? That will help you not just be, like, I don't know, going to the registrar, going to the registration page and picking the classes that look like the best, time of day or whatever,
For sure, because as well as I do, Bobby, you've got to take advantage of what the college is offering as well.
Mhm.
And you do have the counselors that are willing to, have you come in, but you got to know when you get in there, you only get a certain amount of time. And you have your questions together. So I think that counselors a lot of times get a little bit of a bad rap where parents are like, oh, they're not any help at all. But I think the student also has to walk in with, here's what I need. Please help me with this, not just walk in blindly and go, please fix my life.
Yeah,
right?
They don't have time to start from square one. And they need somebody who's interested and already has done some, things and knows what questions they're going to ask. And and if you say, hey, this is these kinds of careers, these kinds of jobs are what I'm interested in, which class should I take? And they're going to point you to the professors that, oh, this professor used to work in that field. This professor has a lot of connections in that field. They're going to love that you want to work in that major. You're not just taking this class as a requirement, right? Go talk to them. They're going to point you and steer you toward the right thing. I mean, I know so many people at my college who literally got jobs or chose jobs because, especially in like the business departments, because the professor steered them toward, a particular class,
right.
or particular classes and then a particular job.
Absolutely. So rounding this out, one of the areas to consider is academics. We're going to explore several others over the next few weeks, but make sure the school has your major, make sure that the reputation of the faculty and, your major for your majors in particular, and then you seek out those people. So that's
absolutely
really the highlights of this.
100%. And of course, we're always happy to answer questions. You can contact us both on our websites from the contact pages on there. We are happy anytime to answer questions and talk about this. As you can tell, we love talking about these things. So that's great.
Okay.